All right, how's it going there, folks? Welcome back here to a Thursday night. It is the Earthmaster out here, about 10:50 p.m. here, California time, May 23rd, 2024. Goodness, almost getting into the month of June already. Halfway through the year, just about. Latest activity shows a 1.1 into the Alaska area. Also seen a 3.5 stirring up down here into the close to the Costa Rica area. Did see a 5.1 stirring up down there earlier. Let's go ahead and check out space weather activity here real quick. And looking at the latest UV filter here, does show that active region out on the northeastern limb of the sun. That is from a former sunspot, which is now just about ready to crest over here across the northeastern limb. Let's see if we can get a better view of this here. Just barely peaking. It seems to be taking its time out here. But this is sunspot number 3663, former sunspot right here. And it's just about ready to crest on the eastern limb of the sun. The visible disk here, 3664, the culprit of many X-flares and the recent aurora activity, is getting closer as well. Just barely see a little blip of it here on this side. But we'll see this here after a few days or so. But for now, we got to watch 3663. It does look like a fairly dynamic sunspot. Far as the magnetogram image of it, looks like we're just barely getting a little bit of visual perspective on that massive sunspot area out there. Uncertain on if this is going to be a major area to watch here in the coming days, but obviously with that far side image there showing the location and the size of that sunspot, something to watch for sure. Current flare threat level right now, still about 90% chance for a C flare, M flare 60, X flare around 10% or so. Aside from this region out there on the northeastern limb of the sun, things are looking fairly non-active. There's really not a whole lot of complexity out here with any of these sunspots. They are all relatively stable. Yes, they would make probably a decent photo there if you're doing some solar shots or whatnot. They're quite visible out there, but there's not a whole lot of dynamic intermixing there of the polarity of the magnetic structures that they harbor, and therefore flaring is kept to a minimal. I've seen a little bit of C-flare activity right now on that map. Let's check the flare chart. Yeah, just very minimal C-flare activity. Hopefully we can get those to change as we watch this massive sunspot region cresting out here on the northeastern limb of the sun. We'll watch that in the coming days. All right, there's our earthquake coming in here in the last hour just off the coast here of Panama. That is on the fracture zone out here on the oceanic crust here. The Panama fracture zone. That is between the Nazca plate and the Cocos plate. Within this area right about here. Of course, got Nazca plate right here, Cocos plate in the darker blue. And these divergent zones out there could trigger some further large-scale activity out here across the Middle America Trench. We'll have to watch that. Earlier today, we did see a 4.6 just into the Honduras area, fairly deep into the Middle America Trench here. So we'll have to watch the area up here for some further movement. South America area, fairly, normal. I can't really say it's super active, but this is normal activity out here on any given day. The latest, a 4-pointer showing up there. It looks like around the Peru area. Nothing on the USGS map, but on the Earthquake 3D globe for sure. Puerto Rico area, see what we got. Some things stirring up out here in the last hour as well. 4.5 and some other smaller quakes in the vicinity. All this movement out here across the Middle America Trench and these divergent zones out here off the coast of Panama could increase elevated earthquake activity out here against the Caribbean plate. It's a very small, it's not a microplate, but it gets bullied and it gets squeezed around and pushed around and shoved between major plates out here. And it's very subjective there to a lot of strain out here. And when one area of the plate moves, obviously we have to watch the Caribbean plate. And in this case, with the recent ongoing activity out here recently, we'll keep an eye here on the Caribbean plate for some further movement. The States, not a whole lot going on here across the eastern portion of the country. Goodness, did we see some pretty crazy tornado activity out there in Oklahoma once again. These guys are just, they're having a very, very active year out there for tornado activity. We'll cover the weather here in just a little bit. Oil fields getting hit out in Texas. As far as Southern California earthquake activity goes, got a little bit of movement here. Opposite sides of the San Andreas Fault here on the Pacific side and also the North American side of the plate boundary. That's kind of interesting. So got to watch that. Got to watch for any signs of unusual activity following the recent swarming out here. Let me show you guys the last 30 days of activity. That's a lot. But our areas of focus have been down here south of the border on the Imperial Fault, the Brawley seismic zone up here. And we've even seen a little separate swarming up here with a 4-pointer recently. So we got to watch for little key indicators that might be showing some potential larger scale adjustment out here. And there's a little movement on the opposite side of the plate boundary here. It's something to watch. Right now, not a lot of swarming going on here, but there's been a handful of earthquakes there bouncing back and forth here between the plate boundary. Los Angeles, fairly quiet, one little microquake there near the Corona area. But aside from that, moving up north, not a whole lot of movement out here for now. Some spotty activity out here in the Coast Range faults. Cascadia subduction zone out there sleeps for now. A look at the Cascadia tremor shows 262 epicenters of tremor along the Cascadia subduction zone. Now that's not volcanic tremor, but a tremor between the Juan de Fuca plate, which is slowly subducting underneath the North American plate here. So strain obviously building up. 324 years of strain has built up since the last mega quake out here. So, you know, it could happen anytime. It could happen in tomorrow. It could happen maybe in 100 years from now. Average intervals run between about 250 up to 500 years or so for the mega quake activity out here. Pacific Northwest, California, I should say, Washington up here. Handful of earthquakes out there. Really nothing big. Mostly looks like some fault systems out here against the Cascades showing some activity. Very close to the volcanoes, but I don't think this is associated with the volcanic activity or any volcanic activity. It's a fairly deep fault structure out here taking place in the Pacific Northwest. Yellowstone, nothing going on, or at least shown up here on the map, but I do want to verify this here. Yeah, not any type of ground motion. This is not ground movement. This is just a it looks like, I don't know what it looks like, but it's not anything of abnormal activity. If that showed up all across the park, then we got an issue. We got some problems going on there. Obviously, some major ground movement would be taking place out there across the Yellowstone area. But this is just a malfunctioning seismograph, digital seismograph station here that I'm sure will be fixed and adjusted there accordingly. But that's just out of whack. As far as any local activity there across Yellowstone, there's really not a whole lot. Some wind events, minor earthquake activity right here, but goodness, things couldn't be any quieter, I think, for now across Yellowstone. Into the Aleutian Trench, a little earthquake activity here this morning of 4.7. That earthquake, if you look at this here, this earthquake 29 kilometers deep. This one a little bit deeper there, so it's a little odd. Normally on this area you'll see shallow earthquake activity as you head upstream, but this is opposite. But this whole area has been active here over the last 7 days of activity. Has shown quite a few 4s and whatnot. I think we even had a 5-pointer out here, 6-pointer, excuse me, earlier this week. So keep an eye on the Aleutian Trench. It has been quite active out here recently. The Kilauea Volcano, not much going on here across the summit area. A little bit happening across the East Rift Zone. Let's go check out the latest information here from the USGS by the way of volcanoes there across the monitored stations. All fairly normal. The Great Sitkin volcano still underneath the watch. This has been active for a little while with elevated, periodic episodes of earthquake activity and whatnot. But we're looking for the Kilauea volcano here and the latest update on this, which states that the volcano is currently not erupting and things have decreased in terms of earthquake activity. But like any other day, they could increase out of the blue. So we got to watch this for some adjustment. Obviously, things are inflated across the area. Here's the inflation chart. A steady rise here. Look at that. I don't know. I've never seen it that steady before. That looks a little odd. But either way, the last 30 days of activity does show these periods of deflation right here, followed up by major inflation. And this spot right here today marks the highest point we've seen across the summit area since 2018, since the 2018 eruption, which happened much further away from the summit off in the East Rift Zone. So things are, obviously we have to watch this. The Western Pacific here, the Kuril-Kamchatka, watching this area here. This region, I feel, is quite primed for a large megaquake. I'm talking about above a 7. This area is definitely built up strain over the, I don't know the last time we've seen a megaquake out here, but it's well overdue, I feel. The accumulated slip rate out here is roughly average, about 83 mm per year. And that can vary out here across different regions. But, I don't know. It seems to be, over the past few months or so, we've seen a lot of deeper activity out here in the Sea of Osk area underneath this region, which would be the subduction zone, and very minimal activity upstream. So this region here, I think, is it's ready. It's fairly ripe in terms of producing a large earthquake, and that's a major subduction zone there across the area. And it's a big one at that, definitely a large one. We'll continue to watch that area. Across the areas further south, not quite the clustering going on here across the Philippines for now. That migration of activity has halted here and moved its way up across the Java Trench. There across Sumatra area with some forests going on there. So watch for some further migration. It's almost predictable here in terms of watching where this activity is going to kick up at. And you can pretty much follow a trail of movement up here. It looks like it's stopped here just off the northern coast of Sumatra. We'll watch the Andaman Sea area here a little bit further north for some movement overnight and maybe tomorrow. New Zealand 3.1, deep activity underneath that region again. It's a hot spot of deep activity. Fairly quiet out here across the Vanuatu region and the Tonga Trench, but technically speaking, this area has seen a lot of activity here recently. So most of the pressure and the transfer has gone further west, as we're noting here across the plate boundary up here around the Sumatra area. Older activity from this morning there in the Indian Ocean. Really haven't seen any adjustment following all that activity, but it's been a while since I've seen any large-scale activity like this out here. But so far, no major changes going on out here in the region. The Mediterranean area, looks like there's a swarm of earthquakes out here. Let me pull up the EMSC model and see what we have real quick. Definitely a swarm going on here into the Sea of Crete area. Notice these earthquakes coming in back to back, specifically within this region. Looks like the latest a 2.8 in that area. So we'll have to watch it. Definitely looks like some adjustment going on here across this region. And of course, with any elevated earthquake activity or swarming, we've got to keep an eye for some larger movement. Right now, it looks like it's centered around that Sea of Crete area, so we'll definitely keep an eye on that. The Atlantic Ocean, fairly quiet. A little three-pointer out there around the Azores, but let's check out Iceland, right? Kind of comes and goes in waves here with this volcanic activity. I've noticed that we're just in a little lull right now in terms of movement. And the same for Iceland activity. It looks like things have kind of mellowed out here in the last 12 hours. Not a whole lot of earthquake activity out here, but man, things are stressed underneath the region. Talking about below the subsurface area, things are well inflated. And, it's just a matter of time before we get that further push of magma that just breaks through, and we'll see the eruption take place again there across the Iceland area. This update was put out 2 days ago, almost 3 days ago now, and here's the latest level. We're probably above that now as far as magma accumulation and strain. They're in the red. All these stars indicate they're the moment of eruption in the past inflation events, and we are up there, almost matching the start of all this deal that happened back in November of last year, October, November of last year. So it's just we got to watch for earthquake activity. Watch for divergent zone activity out here up and down the North Atlantic Ocean. When things start really kicking up out here in the North Atlantic Ocean, then I expect things to really ramp up here across the Iceland area. But for now, we're not seeing that activity. All right, let's see. Storm Prediction Center. Goodness, man, it's crazy tornado activity out there in Oklahoma today. It's just been the year 2024, I think, is going to go down in the history books there for tornado activity. I was watching Reed Timmer, the famous storm chaser out there, driving in the storms out there earlier in Oklahoma, and man, they caught some awesome tornadic, photogenic tornadoes earlier, and man, it's crazy. But like any tornado activity, got to be cautious because there's a lot of danger out there in terms of damage. And this is overnight. Still looks like things may be quite active here in terms of the severe weather potential. This here is for hold on a second here. Day one. Where's day two? There's day two. Okay. Gonna skip this. This is day 2 for Friday. Tomorrow. It may be Friday out where someone's at, but right now, still Thursday night here. Huge area of slight risk for some severe weather activity, and a decent chance for tornado activity as well. I don't think they had a huge tornado threat out here in Oklahoma. I think they only had about a 5%, and there were some big photogenic tornadoes out there today. So, don't take the 2% and 5% lightly. Main threat looks like it's going to be hail tomorrow across the hatched area. And these guys just cannot get a break. The severe weather bounces back a little bit there on Saturday, back into the area that was hit today. It looks like Oklahoma and Kansas area. Yep. I wish I could say it's calming down, but it doesn't look like it. So this area is under the gun once again here for some severe weather. And that is for Saturday. Pretty decent shot of tornado activity once again in the areas that got hit today. Wind and hail events out there as well. So it's quite active, folks. Let's take a look and see if we got anything that may tell me that we're going to enter into a pattern of quietness right about, maybe towards the first or second week of June. It looks like things may quiet down, but we got quite the period of severe weather, it looks like, through the remainder of May. That's going to be kicking up out there across that area. So I know these guys need the rain, but they don't need these large damaging twisters that are destroying towns and communities out there. So just hope for the best, and make sure you have a plan right? A weather plan. You got to have a tornado plan out there because things can go crazy in a blink of an eye. Take a look at all these seismograph stations. Pretty quiet. Not a whole lot going on out there for now. And we'll just keep an eye on things here. Caribbean plate definitely needs some watching out here with all this movement along the Middle America Trench. Still waiting to see what the stir-up may be from here. We may be seeing some of that activity stirring up around the Sea of Crete today from all this activity earlier this morning. It's a broad-scale area of earthquake movement, which can ultimately have an effect or a domino effect on certain things out here. Because the Sea of Crete area up here, most of the movement we've seen today is across this region here, across the divergent zones. But we'll keep an eye on things, folks, and we'll keep an eye on that sunspot that's coming around the northeastern limb. Should be a dandy of a sunspot. Can't wait to see what happens in the morning. See if things kick back up in terms of space weather activity. There's some movement there in the Puerto Rico Trench. Looks like another earthquake here in the last. Looks like they added another one in the last half hour or so. Alrighty, we'll catch you guys back out here in the morning. It's Friday, right? Friday is tomorrow. So have a good one. We'll catch you guys back out here early morning for the Friday morning update. Take care, folks. Stay safe.